What's up, guys? How's everyone doing? I'm excited to be here, as always. I always feel weird being here because, like stated before, everyone sits over here, and then we have the faithful over here, sitting into right here, making sure this side gets their attention. So I'm going to be over here a lot, but I'm also going to be going back and forth like this because you guys need it too. All right. Well, yeah, again, I'm excited to be here, guys. Every time I come here, I always feel so welcomed and so loved by everyone. And it's a joy to be here. It's a small group, but you could see that God is doing things in every single one of your lives, and I think it's special. And I just hope you guys believe that and you see that. And I love just being and seeing just a glimpse of what He's doing, just by the way you guys interact with one another. I love it. So, yeah, the weight of worry. We'll be closing this series up tonight. And I don't know if you guys know this, but you're kind of stuck with me these next couple weeks because I'm here. I know, right? That's what I said. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm happy to be here. But I'm here tonight, of course, and then next weekend as well. I'll be filling in for Josh because he's preaching in the Big Boy service. So, yeah, you guys, if that gets you excited, then that's cool. But if not, I'm dearly sorry because you're stuck with me, and I'm not going away. So deal with it. But anyways, I think a lot's kind of happened ever since I was last time I was here. I think it was, January. Had the opportunity to hang out with you guys and speak to you. But I think a lot has happened in all of our lives, I would say. It's kind of crazy, right? We're almost halfway through 2017. And looking back, I know it's kind of crazy, right? But looking back, I'm like, wow, so much has happened. God has already done so much. And there's also been hardships. And I think every single one of us can probably identify maybe some struggles that we've gone through these past 6 months. And I know we're all going through our own individual things, but and it's important to know that especially with our generation, particularly with the youth, we're talking about worry, that even though you might not have the same struggles as an adult may have, you might not have the same responsibilities, you might not have the same weight on your shoulders, that doesn't mean, and I feel like a lot of times happens to our youth, is that our struggles get minimized because we're not going through the same thing that everybody else who may be older than us or more experienced than us is dealing with. But I just want to let you guys know that there's nothing that you're going through that is not too big for God to handle or not too small for God to carry. He cares about every single part of your life. And whether it's worry or sin or whatever struggle you're going through, God cares and He loves you a lot. So. It's funny. We're talking about worry. The question we had earlier was like, what was your fear, like a silly fear you had when you were a kid, right? And I was thinking about your pastor Josh. Because you guys know him as pastor, but I know him as brother. So I've seen parts of him that you guys have never seen. And when we were little, when we were growing up, we always shared the same room. And not just share the same room, we shared the same bed. We had 2 separate beds. I actually had my own room for a very long time, but I still slept in his same bed because Josh has this fear. He has the fear of darkness. Seriously, he would freak out if I wasn't there with him that night, sleeping by his side. Like, I had to be right there, and we had to have, like, the door cracked a little bit, the light coming through the hallway, and then the night light on. And if that wasn't happening, he would freak out. Like, he was scared. So I think it's funny looking back. It's like, when I think of fear, I think of Josh, like, scared out of his mind of the dark, being alone by himself. I don't know how he's doing right now with that as an adult. I hope it's gotten better. we're gonna have. We should ask Jamie that. I'm sure she might have a take. He's like, hey babe, can we turn on the light real quick, just in the hallway? Is that cool? Like, yeah, sure. Like, what's the big deal? But I always thought that was so funny growing up. So today we're going to be looking primarily at Philippians 4. And I kind of like to think of it, whenever I read out of Philippians, I always think of when I was a kid, and I had this Bible, this small Bible. And you know how with some Bibles, like they shorten the names of the books to fit on the page? And for Philippians, it would always say Phil. And so for the longest time, I thought like this was a book about a dude named Phil. And so I would refer to it as I was like, oh yeah, we're reading out of Phil. And so ever since then, I call it Phil, and you're just going to have to roll with that tonight. So we're in Phil. We're in Phil chapter 4, and follow along with me. But before we do, let's pray together. Father, you're so good to us, Lord. We were just singing those words together. Your love never fails us. It never gives up, God. And we just take a moment to thank you for that, Jesus. That even when we don't feel like you're near, even when we don't feel like your love is coming towards us, and we don't feel like we're encountering it, God, you've shown it to us anyways, God. And you've continued to do so, Lord. So we praise you for that. We praise you for all of us being here together. I know that you have a purpose for every single person here. And I hope that tonight would be an encouragement to them, and that we open our eyes and we open our hearts to what you have to say tonight, Jesus. We love you, Lord. Bless the rest of this night in your precious name. Amen. All right. We got Phil up there. Phil 4. All right. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses, or another translation says transcends, which I like a lot better, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, and this is what I like to call the whatevers of Scripture. You get a lot of whatevers, and I love it. He goes, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. What a beautiful passage. So earlier we were talking about kind of silly things that we may have been afraid of as children. But what makes you anxious today? What makes you fearful? What kind of makes you lose your mind in some ways, and all you could think about is that thing? And it could be even the smallest things. Have you ever noticed that? The things that make us anxious. And what I've noticed in my life is that when worry comes, it creeps in slowly into my life. And sometimes I don't even see it. And it disrupts my entire day. Sometimes it can be the smallest little thing, a thought that provokes a certain fear of mine. So what makes you worried? When I think about the word worry, I think about our Disneyland trips, actually. I know, isn't that kind of weird? I think about our Disneyland trips that we would take. Has anyone ever been to Disneyland? Wow. I'm so sorry. Have you been to, you have been to Disneyland? Okay, so you guys raise hands together. Okay, cool. I'm like, I am so Disneyland. But I remember when we would do these long, because anyone who has driven out to Disneyland from this area, it's like usually 6 to 7 hours, depending on how fast the driver is. But I would always remember during these trips, and we'd take a whole group of people, all of our friends, and we were just small, like children at the time. And throughout the trip, as a kid, you get impatient, right? and you get uncomfortable in the seat. Like, I know I'm going to Disneyland, but in the meantime, I know I'm stuck in this chair with nothing to do, sitting out the window, and all I can do the whole time is pester my parents saying, hey, where are we? When are we going to be there? What's going on? I'm uncomfortable. I'm crying. I remember on more than one occasion I threw up. Somehow I would always find a way to throw up on a long trip inside the car. Sorry, Mom. Yeah, God bless that woman. But it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable, and I think a lot of times it's a lot like our own lives today. That in so many ways we are kind of still like that anxious child, that we lose sight on where we're going, because we lose sight about where we're at right now and where that direction is leading us to. So something so small as being stuck in one place, which may be uncomfortable for a temporary amount of time, it's not. I'm still going to Disneyland. Like, I'm still gonna be riding rides and having a bunch of really unhealthy snacks that night, but in that time, in that moment, I'm still stuck on that one thing. That's being uncomfortable. And I think anxiety is a lot like that sometimes. When it creeps up on us, it controls us and makes us lose sight of where we're at and where we're going. So I think it's a sign that in a lot of ways we've kind of lost sight on what God has done in our lives and what God is doing in our lives and what he's continually going to do. I think worry is an indicator in our hearts that I've been trying to keep things in my own control. Because as soon as you learn that, as soon as you learn how to live outside of yourself, knowing that this life is not all about you, that the center stage actually belongs to God, as soon as you learn that this spot right here isn't for you, that it's for God, it takes so much pressure off you. Because when you want all the control and you want all the attention, all you do is think about yourself, you worry a lot, right? Because if I'm focusing on myself all the time, I'm going to see a lot of faults and areas where I struggle. I'm not saying ignore your faults, but what I'm saying is when all I am is fixated on what my needs and wants are instead of what God calls us to love others and love him, and I'm instead doing this and putting myself in a place where I'm not meant or designed to be, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to worry a lot. It's like we're the prop people on the stage. Like we're all kind of like the light people, the sound people. You may be a tree, a prop person. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine just for a second that you pay to go to a show and there's just a dude in a prop tree just sitting in center stage? That wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? That's not how you were designed to be. You weren't designed to live just for yourself. And the world does not revolve around you. You're a part of the story. But the story isn't just about you. And I'm not trying to belittle your value. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You are loved and valued more than you will ever know. But that center stage is God's place, and we can't handle it. So we have to learn to live outside of ourselves. I think worry is the product of our fears. It's the product of our fears, and our fears are the product that I think of a lie we've kind of believed at some point. So worry is fear in action. It's fear coming alive. It's us making the decision to let fear control us, and it's being anxious about the things that we fear. And I think that what fear does is it takes the potential and the fullness of life that God offers us, the peace that God offers us. Paul talks about the peace that transcends all understanding. It takes, I think, fear takes our sights off of that and cripples us and narrows our sight and we lose sight of what God has called us into. Fear cripples us. It takes the fullness of life, the potential that it's had for us and meant for us, and takes it and steals it away from us. But with anything, I think it takes just a shift. As simple as it sounds, I know for me, I have to catch myself a lot of times when I worry. I think it's like anxiety in my family might be like a genetic like trait. So many worriers in my family. And I tend to do that very often, along with many family members. And I think a lot of you here can maybe relate to that in your own way. But all it takes is a shift to move from focusing on my own problems all the time, looking down all the time, to shifting to thinking about things that honor God, thinking about things, holding on to God's truth, connecting with God daily, seeking him with all of my heart. Scripture tells us that when you seek me with all your heart, you'll find me. So if you're kind of half-heartedly seeking God, then you're not going to see all of him, all of what he has to offer. So all it takes is a shift. And a lot of times we're just stuck here, right? Saying, God, look at this. Look what's going on in my life. I can't fix this. I can't do this. I have all these things. I have all these responsibilities. I have school. I have the pressures of my parents, maybe. The pressures of my peers. Maybe a lie that I've taught myself to believe along the way. And my focus is fixed on here. My mind is set on the things that are surrounding me. But if just for a moment I could change my perspective, when we let our faith change our perspective, it changes our entire reality. Because when we shift from focusing on our circumstances to focusing on our relationship with God instead, our faith completely transcends our reality. Meaning, I might not understand it because everything around me is telling me to worry, but God, when I'm near to him, allows me to have a peace that I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. Like, how is it that I'm in this place and all these things are happening to me and I'm struggling and I have all these pressures, but yet here I am in this wild storm of life, and God has granted me peace. What? That's unbelievable. I think one of the ways that we could fight our worry is looking at what Paul says in the whatevers. And we have to learn to say whatever to our worry sometimes. We have to learn to say whatever to our worry. Let's read what he says one more time. Brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. It's almost as if Paul is giving us a criteria. It's almost as if he's saying, like, if what you're thinking about, if what you're fixing your mind on every day doesn't fit this criteria, well, you probably shouldn't be thinking about it. Right? Like, you wonder sometimes, like, what's robbing me of my joy all the time? Why is it that when I'm alone, I'm fearful? Why is it that I'm uncomfortable when I'm just by myself? Or maybe your fears haunt you so much that you think about it all the time, even when you're around people. But Paul gives us this criteria. And I think that we need to think about the things that rob our joy, that steal our joy. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's the influence of a friend that maybe is affecting you in ways that you might not really be noticing. I don't know what it is, but you probably do. And we have to learn how to protect the joy, to protect the peace that God is offering us in relationship to him. Because if what I'm thinking about affects who I am to that level, because Paul is making a major point here. Because I think what we set our minds on is what we become. What we think about is who we will eventually be. So if all I'm thinking about all the time is negative thoughts, the things that pull me away from my relationship with God, that don't help me love other people better, that maybe thoughts that have provoked this sense of hurt against your own worth, and has completely taken away from you your true identity in Christ as a child of God. Those kind of thoughts, we have to draw the line and say, I can't entertain these things anymore. It's a lie. It's deceitful. I need to change my perspective, and I need to learn how to guard my heart, to guard my mind, and to foster this life that thinks about things that are what? True. Things that are honorable. Things that are just. Things that are pure. Things that are lovely, commendable, excellent, worthy of praise. To draw myself towards these things. It's easy to get caught up in all the different influences that we have in our life. And we get swept away with all these different things because there's so many different outlets drawing towards us, right? Like whether it's social media or people or whatever. But there's so many different influences in our life. And if we're not careful, and they could lead us to a place that we don't want to be, with an anxious heart. So we have to protect our joy. We have to learn how to draw near to God and seek him with all that we are. So how do we do that? How do we learn how to foster a life like that? Let's go to Psalm 1. Psalm 1, verses 2 through 3. Nice and short. This is what it says. But they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They are like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do. This gives us this beautiful imagery of what our life looks like when we're rooted in relationship with God. You see, you could be planted in places other than God. You could be planted in your own desires. You could be planted in the influence of other people in the world. But the key here to this passage is that it says when the seasons change, they're bearing fruit. See, when the seasons change and you're planted in other places besides in God, the climate and the weather is going to blow you away. Because like another translation tells us that it doesn't just say that it's planted, it says it's rooted. It means it has a place that keeps it firm, right? But when we're planted elsewhere, we're not rooted the way that God meant us to be. So when seasons change, when life comes our way, when anxiety, when worry comes into our life, it sweeps us away and brings us even farther from where we originally thought we were. So what is it in your life that you need to think about, to add maybe, or maybe even to take out, that will allow you to meditate. This is what the words say. It says, meditate on it day and night. He's talking about, it says the law of the Lord, but really what it's talking about is your relationship with God. In the original in the original language, it's just a general sense of adoration for God. It's knowing God, basically. So whether that's through prayer, whether that's it's just this interaction with God. So what do you have to do to learn how to interact with God every day? To make sure that you're rooted and you're planted in the right place. I think another thing that worry does to us is that it makes us lose sight of our worth. Talked a little bit about this earlier. Let's look at Matthew 10 real quick. Matthew 10. Don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body. They cannot touch your soul. Fear only God, who can destroy both soul and body in hell. What is the price of 2 sparrows? 1 copper coin? But not a single sparrow can fall to the ground without your Father knowing it. And the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. God is intrinsically involved in your life. He knows every part about you. You may have heard this from even when you were a small child. That was one of the first things that I ever remembered learning about God. God knows all the hairs on my head? That's kind of crazy. Well, what does that tell us about God? He cares about the little things in our life. He cares about the little struggles, the places in our life that nobody may even know about. God knows. And when we worry, we lose sight of our worth and our identity. Because if we knew our worth and our identity, we would know that God has a future for us. He has a life for us that is not full of fear. 1 Timothy tells us that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. So if it's not of those things, then it's not from God. So when you worry, you lose sight of who you are and your worth and your identity. So if you see that, then it's a good indicator of, oh wait, I need to step back. What's kind of, if we can go back to Philippians, my buddy Phil, real quick. Phil 4. What's crazy about Phil is that the writer of Phil, does anyone know the writer? Paul. Correct. Winner. The writer of Paul is in prison. Some of you may know this. He is physically stuck in prison. He's confined by a cell, but yet he writes these words, "Do not be anxious about anything." What? Dude, you probably have a whole list of reasons, more than anyone else in the world, to worry. But yet, you are writing from an attitude, from a place, and to even encourage other people in such a way to say, rejoice at all times. And then he says it twice, rejoice. Don't be anxious. What? That's illogical. That's crazy. This dude is stuck in a prison. The circumstances are grim, okay? He's possibly in line to be executed, about to die. And yet he uses these words. And this tells us something. It tells us that your circumstances may tell you to worry, but your God allows you to have peace. That your circumstances, when you believe in God and you have a relationship with Christ, they don't have to control you, no matter how difficult they are. The Lord is at hand. And I love that phrase. He says, the Lord is at hand. His hand is actively working in your life. His hand is actively working, even in your prisons. Even if, this doesn't even have to be worry. It could be anything. It could be sin. It could be some circumstances or struggle. Whatever it may be in your current context, God is able to reach out his hand and be involved in your current context. The Lord is at hand, even in your prison. Even in your darkest hour, when everything around you seems to be telling you to give in or give up to your fears or your worry, God allows us and gives us the power by his Spirit to be set free. God has the keys to your prison of worry. The Lord is at hand. And that means actually two things. It means not only that God's hand is working in your life, but it also means that God has the final say. God has the final say on everything. He gets the final word, if you didn't know. For those of you that may have not read the end of the Bible. Jesus, that was super loud. Wow. Okay. Jesus gets the final say. When it's all said and done, when all pain, when all death, when all suffering, when all sin passes away, Jesus, the one who conquered death and life and resurrected from the grave, he gets the final word. In Revelation 1, I know this one isn't on the screen, but I'm going to read it anyway, so listen closely. He says this is Jesus talking to John at the end of his life. And this is what happens in the scene. It's amazing. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as if I were dead. Can you even imagine that? We can't even comprehend this. This is Jesus in his glorified body, just shining, right? And he's like, I'm just going to die. See ya. Like, I can't even comprehend how beautiful it is. I'm just going to fall down and die. That's what is happening to John here. I fell at his feet as if I were dead. But he laid his right hand on me, the hand of blessing, and said, don't be afraid. I'm the first and the last. I am the living one. I died, but look. He says, but look, because some of you may not be looking. He says, but look, I am alive. See, I died once, but now I'm alive forever and ever. And this is Jesus, I hold the keys of death and the grave. Jesus not only holds the keys to death and the grave, but he also holds the key to your prison. And we got to believe that. We got to draw towards that. I pray that if there's only one thing that you guys get out of tonight, it's that Jesus is not only actively working in your life and around you, but has the power to enable you to be free. Because a lot of you may have come in here today feeling stuck. Maybe feeling stuck relationally, spiritually. And God enables us to be free from the very things that confine us in our hearts and in our minds. So I pray that we would accept that today, that we would believe that with all of our hearts, that we would draw ever more to God. Let's pray together. Father, we're just thankful, Lord, for your grace. Thankful that you'd be willing to send your son for us, that you would suffer through the very same things that we've suffered through, God, and even more. And we know that if we believe in you, Jesus, if we confess with our mouths and we believe in our hearts that you are God and that you did make that sacrifice, but you rose again. And you did die, Lord, but you're alive now, Jesus. And the very same power, Lord, that rose you to life, you are offering to us through your Spirit, that we would be conquerors of all of our fears, of the worry that strikes our hearts and our minds, Jesus. So I pray that we would lean into that tonight, God, in every day of our lives with a confidence that is unshakable. We love you, Jesus, in your precious name. Amen.